Morning everyone. I hope you all had a lovely week and survived the wind this week and rain. Last week we heard how Joseph was sold as a slave by his brothers and he ended up in Egypt. Well, this week's story we hear that Joseph became a slave to an official named Potiphar and quickly rose to head the servant of the household. After Potiphar's wife lied about Joseph, Joseph lands in prison where he once again rises to the warden's trusted assistant. Joseph interprets 2 dreams again of prisoners, which we'll hear next week will eventually lead to him interpreting dreams of pharaohs. So let's sit back and hear the story and watch the craft. See you all again soon. Bye.
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. On day 1, God made light. Light, and God was pleased with all he'd made. On day 2, sea and sky. Sea and sky, light, and God was pleased with all he'd made. On day 3, land, plant, seeds. Land, plant, seeds, sea and sky, light, and God was pleased with all he made. On day 4, sun, moon, stars. Sun, moon, stars, land, plant, seeds, sea and sky, light, and God was pleased with all he made. On day 5, fish and birds. Fish and birds, sun, moon, stars, land, plant, seeds, sea and sky, light, and God was pleased with all he made. On day 6, animals, humans. Animals, humans, fish and birds, sun, moon, stars, land, plant, seeds, sea and sky, light, and God was pleased with all he made. On day 7, God took a rest. After making animals, humans, fish and birds, sun, moon, stars, land, plant, seeds, sea and sky, light, and God was pleased with all he made.
Hey everyone, good morning. I hope you're well and you're ready to go this morning. We've been learning, haven't we, over the last few weeks about a guy called Joseph. Joseph had this coat of fantastic colours given to him by his father, but his brothers were jealous and thought that their dad loved Joseph more because of this coat he'd given them. I think it was last week we heard that the brothers threw Joseph down a well, probably intending to kill him. But ultimately, in the end, they didn't. They sold him to some passing travellers. So that's where we're going to pick up the story again this morning. Joseph had been taken by these travellers from his own brothers. He was taken as a slave and he was taken to Egypt. Now, when he got there, he was sold to a man called Potiphar, who was one of Pharaoh's officials. He worked alongside Pharaoh, governing the country. Now, as a slave, one has to do everything that their master tells them to do, but they don't get paid. Whether you think that's fair or not, I don't know, but that's the way it was. And Joseph worked hard in Potiphar's house when he was there. But even though his master was Potiphar, that's who he reported to in Egypt, Joseph knew that God really was his true master. He was always honest and he always tried to do things the way God wanted him to. Soon Potiphar trusted Joseph so much that he put him in charge of his whole household. Now Potiphar would have had a huge house. So Joseph was even in charge of the other slaves in the household and could tell them what to do. He made sure that the other slaves took good care of Potiphar and of Potiphar's wife and family. But Potiphar's wife wasn't a very good woman. She wanted Joseph to be her boyfriend. But Joseph knew that that was wrong. She was married to Potiphar already. And it would be wrong for Joseph to become her boyfriend. But one day when no one else was in the house, Potiphar's wife grabbed Joseph. She grabbed his cloak and she said, "Nobody will ever know." But Joseph was a man of integrity. He wanted to do the right thing even if no one else could see him. He knew that even no one here on earth could see him, God certainly could. Joseph ran away from Potiphar's wife so fast that he left his cloak behind. Now Potiphar's wife was very angry with Joseph. She told lies to Potiphar about him. And then she held up Joseph's cloak and said, "See, look, I've got proof that he tried to attack me. He left his cloak in my bedroom." When Potiphar heard this, he sent Joseph to prison. It was a really sad day for Joseph. But even though Joseph went to prison, he still tried to act in the way that God would want him to act. And like Potiphar, the warden in the prison soon learned to trust Joseph. He put Joseph in charge of all the other prisoners. Two men who were at the prison who had been sent there by Pharaoh as well, when Pharaoh was ruler of Egypt. One had been his cupbearer in the palace and the other had been a baker. Each of these men had had dreams and were very, very upset by them. So Joseph said, "Tell me your dreams and God will help me tell you what they mean." So the cupbearer went first, and he dreamed about a grapevine with 3 branches. In the dream, the cupbearer squeezed the juice into a cup for Pharaoh. So Joseph was happy to tell him that this meant that in 3 days, Pharaoh would let him out of the prison and ask him to come back to work. Good news, eh? When that happens, Joseph requested of the cupbearer, "Please tell Pharaoh about me." The baker, on the other hand, had a different dream. He had a dream about 3 baskets on his head. The top one was full of bread and cakes that he'd baked for Pharaoh. As he was carrying the baskets, though, birds came and ate all of the bread and all of the cakes. Joseph was really, really sorry, but he had to tell him some bad news, and that was that in 3 days, Pharaoh would have him put to death by hanging. After he died, the birds would eat his body. The baker naturally was very worried. But what happened? Well, 3 days later, Pharaoh had a big party for some important guests. During that party, he called the cupbearer and the baker to come forward in front of all of those guests. He announced that the cupbearer would have his job back, just as Joseph had predicted. He would be in charge of bringing wine to Pharaoh and to his guests. Just what Joseph had said. But sadly, the meaning of the baker's dream also came true, as Joseph had predicted. Pharaoh announced that he would be put to death by hanging. Not such good news. Well, that's quite a dramatic end, isn't it, to this week's story? And you'll learn more of that in your groups, I'm sure. So do have fun and a good time doing that. Next week, we're going to learn about some more dreams and how Joseph got on when he helped Pharaoh in particular understand exactly what those dreams meant as well. Have a good time this morning, and we'll see you again next week for the final part, or no, the next part of the story. Thank you.
Morning, Mary.
Good morning.
The sun is out.
The sun is out.
And we are free.
And we are free.
What do we mean by being free, Mary?
We're not locked in our houses.
Yeah.
We're not locked in jail. We can almost go wherever we want to and do almost what we want
Which
to do.
is something that Joseph couldn't do.
That's
because
right.
Joseph was thrown into jail for something he didn't do, wasn't
That's
he?
right, yes.
Yeah, and he was thrown into jail by whom?
By Potiphar.
Potiphar. Yeah, so we're going to do this morning what?
We are going to make a little Joseph behind bars.
Okay.
And the one I'm going to make today, you'll be able, in a minute, you can be able to open. I'm not going to stick
All
down
right,
the
so you'll
sides.
be able to close the doors
on him.
on
yes.
him, and you'll be in prison. Okay, so where do we start?
So you need some, I've got brown paper. You don't necessarily have to have brown paper. You could have any colour you like,
Okay,
or you could colour it brown.
right.
And what you need to do is fold it in half, and you need to make sure it's wide. You can get your little man in a minute.
Yeah.
I'll explain about the little man.
Okay.
Then you need to fold the top one over slightly.
It's like origami,
It
isn't it?
Just so that you need to cut.
Okay, shall I come around there?
Come around here. You need to cut a square bit out.
Okay.
Quite far enough down.
I can see what's going to happen. So when we open it up, we've got
A little window.
got it. Yeah,
Right.
brilliant.
Then you need to get some. You need to flatten that out a bit, and then you need to either draw. I've printed some Josephs off, which you can find a template on. Google it, and you'll find a template.
Okay.
Or you can do what Glyn did very
Whoa.
cleverly just before we started. He drew one
I
himself.
drew one.
Joe, there you go.
Okay, and it wasn't very hard because if you look, he's just a circle and a rectangle with the corners cut off, and then a face drawn on, and a big frown because
He
it's
was
very sad. Yeah.
So you need to. I'm gonna use the one I've already.
You'd need to, if you drew it yourself, you'd probably need to colour it in as well,
Yeah,
wouldn't
you would.
So what are you gluing? You're gluing the man
in, and you need to
into
make sure you can still see him through the little window.
Okay. You need to be able to see his sad
Sad
face. All right. Okay, he just looks like he's standing behind a window though,
Yep.
Mary. How are we going to make it into a
what
jail?
we need to do is cut some thinner strips of brown.
These are going to be like the bars.
These are like the bars
Okay.
of the jail. Depending on how big you cut your
Yeah.
squares, depends on how many you need. And then you
Okay. And then presumably we're just going to glue them at the top
Just
and the
on the
bottom.
bottom,
What would
yeah.
happen if we glued them all the way down?
it would stick.
It would stick, and you wouldn't be able to. You wouldn't be able to open the jail, and Joseph would be there forever.
Yeah, because he does get out eventually.
He does.
That's next week's story.
Ah, well, that's exciting. Shall I come around that side
Let's
and we'll
come
see
around.
what's going there?
And as I said, you don't have to have brown card. You can have white card, or you can write paper.
You
or
could write jail
jail
across the top. Yeah,
And there you go. Very simple craft.
fantastic. That's amazing. So what we've got is, let me just see if I can do this. We've got Joseph about to be put in jail, and then the door is slammed closed, and there he is, stuck in jail. Poor Joseph. I do hope he gets out soon.
He does.
Because that would be very sad, wouldn't it?
He was in there for a while, but eventually he gets out.
Excellent. Well, we're going to hear more about that story next week. And of course, don't forget, if you have made your Joseph in jail, take a picture of it, send it in, and we'd like to include it in next week. So
Really good.
thank you very much, Mary. That was really good.
Thank
A
you.
really
It's
good
been
craft.
Nice and sunny this morning.
It has, hasn't it? Which is great. Okay, have a good day. See you soon.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Put on the sword of the Spirit, ba 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 ba. The helmet of salvation, ba 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 ba. The belt of truth and the shield of faith, ba 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 ba. The breastplate of righteousness and the shoes of the gospel, shoes of the gospel, shoes of the gospel of peace. Put on the sword of the Spirit, yeah, 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 yeah. The helmet of salvation, yeah, 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 yeah. The belt of truth and the shield of faith, yeah, 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 yeah. The breastplate of righteousness and the shoes of the gospel, shoes of the gospel, shoes of the gospel of peace. Yeah.